2 years after my husband divorced me and married my best friend, I was living under a bridge with my little son. One rainy night, as I wrapped my arms around him to keep him warm, a black car pulled up. When the door opened, I froze. Standing in the rain was my wealthy father-in-law, the man my husband told I was dead. His eyes filled with tears as he whispered, You were supposed to be gone. My dear ones, before I share my story, let me thank you from my heart. Your love and support give me the strength to tell these painful truths. If you're new here, please subscribe so you never miss another story of survival, betrayal, and hope. I spent 30 long years in my husband's house. 30 years of silence, of tears soaked into pillows, of waiting for a miracle that never seemed to come. You see, I could not bear children, or so I thought. Every month was a cycle of prayers, fasting, doctors, and disappointment. And with every passing year, my husband Henry grew colder. He no longer looked at me as a wife, but as a failure. At first, he tried to hide it. He would pat my shoulder and say, It's okay. Maybe next year. But as the years went on, those words disappeared. They were replaced with cruel silences and sharp looks. He began staying out late, surrounding himself with younger women who could give him what I could not. Still, I stayed. Why? Because I loved him. Or maybe because I believed my vows meant something. I told myself marriage was for better or worse. I told myself he would come back to me if I just endured. But endurance has a cost. By the time I turned 53, my hair was streaked with gray and my smile had faded. My only comfort was my faith and the tiny garden I kept in the backyard. Every morning, I'd tend to my flowers as if they were children. I'd talk to them, water them, sing to them softly. Sometimes, I imagined their petals opening like little arms reaching for me. But flowers can't hug you back. One cold autumn evening, I returned from the garden to find Henry sitting in the living room. A briefcase rested on the coffee table, and his face was hard, stone-like. Sit down, he said. My heart trembled. For a moment, I thought maybe he was finally going to talk to me, maybe even apologize for the distance. But what he slid across the table made my breath stop. Divorce papers. I looked at him, my hands shaking. Henry, what is this? He didn't flinch. 30 years, Evelyn. 30 years and nothing to show. I won't waste any more of my life with you. Nothing to show, I whispered, my voice cracking. Was my love nothing? Were my years nothing? He leaned back, his lips curling in disdain. You were a burden, and I am done carrying you. Tears blurred my vision. I wanted to scream, to beg, to remind him of every sacrifice I had made for him. But my voice was gone. The weight of his words crushed it out of me. That night, he threw me out just like that. 30 years dissolved into nothing. I remember walking down the street with my small suitcase, the cold wind cutting through my coat. Neighbors peeked from their windows, but no one dared to open their door. I was the barren wife, the woman who couldn't give her husband children. Who would want to take me in? I wandered aimlessly until my legs gave out. I fainted on the sidewalk, and when I woke, I was in a hospital bed. The nurse came in holding a chart, her face soft with pity. Mrs. Evelyn, you need to take care of yourself. You're 6 weeks pregnant. I thought I had misheard. Pregnant at my age, after 30 barren years. I clutched my stomach, tears spilling down my cheeks. Pregnant, I whispered. It was a miracle, a gift from God. In that moment, joy and fear tangled inside me. Joy because the very thing my husband threw me away for had finally come to me. Fear because how could I raise a child alone with nothing but a suitcase and broken dignity? But even in my fear, hope burned brighter. I thought Henry must know. If he sees this miracle, maybe he'll take me back. I gathered my strength and a week later went to his house. I wore my best dress, held my head high, and carried the hospital report in my bag. My heart raced as I walked up the familiar steps, ready to tell him the news that would change everything. But as I reached the front gate, I froze. There were white ribbons and flowers everywhere. Cars filled the driveway. Guests laughed, and music played. My hands shook as I asked a neighbor what was happening. Her words cut through me like knives. "Didn't you hear? Henry just got married today to your friend Clara." Clara, my best friend, the woman who used to sit in my kitchen sipping tea and telling me I was like a sister to her. I stumbled back, my world spinning. My bag slipped from my shoulder, and the hospital papers scattered on the ground. No one noticed. No one cared. That was the day I realized I couldn't tell him. Not then, not ever. And as I walked away from that house, carrying both my unborn child and my broken heart, I had no idea how much darker my journey was about to become. After that day, I felt like the ground had vanished under my feet. I wandered away from the house where music and laughter spilled out. The house that was once mine, filled with people celebrating my husband's new life with my best friend. My legs were weak, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. The image of Clara in white, smiling, her arm wrapped around Henry, burned into my mind like fire. Clara, the woman who used to wipe my tears when Henry insulted me. Clara, the one who told me to be patient, he will change. How long had they been planning this betrayal? I clutched my stomach as if shielding the tiny life inside me from the cruelty of the world. My baby, my miracle. It was the only thing that kept me from collapsing in the middle of the street. That night, I sat in a cheap motel room I could barely afford. I looked at the ceiling and whispered, "God, why? Why now? Why her? Why him?" But no voice answered, just silence. The kind of silence that makes you feel invisible. The next few weeks were the hardest of my life. I had nowhere permanent to go. No family nearby, no money. My parents were long gone, and I had no siblings. My only family had been Henry and Clara, and both had betrayed me. Sometimes I'd pass by the grocery store and see them together. They looked so perfect, so happy, and when people saw me, they turned their faces as if I was a ghost haunting the living. It wasn't long before I learned Henry was telling everyone, including his wealthy father, that I had died. Yes, he buried me with lies while I was still alive. The first time I heard it, I couldn't breathe. A neighbor's daughter whispered it to me as she handed me a loaf of bread out of pity. "Mr. Henry said you died, Miss Evelyn," he told his father. "He had a big funeral for you at the mansion." I laughed then, a hollow, bitter laugh. I couldn't believe it. "A funeral for me?" The girl nodded. "Yes." He cried in front of everyone. Your best friend was beside him, holding his hand. People gave money, flowers. They said it was the saddest thing. I wanted to scream, to run to his father and shout, "I am alive. Look at me." But I was carrying a child, and my body was fragile. My health was weak, and I feared the stress might harm the baby. So I stayed silent. I hid like a shadow, working odd jobs when I could, living in small, dirty rooms when I had enough to pay. On the worst nights, when I had nothing, I slept under the bridge with my growing belly, listening to the sound of cars rushing above me. Clara had everything I ever wanted. She wore the jewelry Henry once promised me. She lived in the mansion I used to clean. She entertained guests in the garden where I once planted roses. And worst of all, she called herself Mrs. Evelyn. It was like she stole my life and wore it as her own. The months passed slowly, painfully. My stomach grew heavy, and with it my fear. I had no doctor, no proper food, no comfort. Some nights I cried into the darkness, begging my baby to hold on, to be strong. "Please, little one. You are all I have left." Then came the night of his birth. It was a stormy evening. The sky roared with thunder, and rain poured down in heavy sheets. I was in an abandoned shelter near the bridge, clutching my belly as waves of pain tore through me. Alone, completely alone. Hours felt like days. I screamed, cried, bit my lip until I tasted blood. I thought I would die there, nameless, forgotten, just as Henry wanted. But then, at dawn, with the sound of rain still drumming on the roof, my son arrived. He was small, fragile, his cries thin but determined. The moment I held him, something inside me broke open. Love, pure, overwhelming love, flooded through me. I kissed his tiny head and whispered through tears, "You are my miracle, my reason to live." I named him Samuel. It means God has heard. Because even though the world turned its back on me, God had given me him. The next 2 years were both beautiful and brutal. Beautiful because every time Samuel smiled, I forgot my hunger. Every time his tiny hand clutched my finger, I felt like the richest woman alive. Brutal because I was raising him under a bridge. I begged for food on the streets. Sometimes kind strangers gave me coins. Sometimes they spat at me and called me names. I endured cold winters with nothing but thin blankets wrapped around us. I endured the shame of watching other children run into warm houses while my son slept in my arms, his little body shivering. I worked whenever I could, washing clothes for strangers, cleaning alleys, picking scraps. Every penny went to keep Samuel alive, and still Henry's lies spread like wildfire. To the world, I was dead. My grave existed somewhere I had never seen, covered in flowers, bought with tears that were never meant for me. The irony made me bitter, but Samuel kept me gentle. For him, I smiled even when I was breaking inside. Then came the night that changed everything. It was raining again. The bridge leaked and water pooled around us. Samuel, now 2 years old, coughed weakly in my arms. My heart ached with helplessness. I held him close, rocking him, whispering, "Mama's here. You'll be okay. Please, God, don't take him from me." That was when headlights cut through the rain. A sleek black car pulled up to the edge of the bridge. I froze. No one ever stopped here. The door opened, and out stepped a tall man with silver hair, wearing a long coat. My breath caught. It was my father-in-law, Henry's father, the man who had always carried himself with pride, whose wealth built empires. His eyes fell on me, then slid to the small child in my arms. His face went pale, his mouth trembling. "Evelyn," he whispered, his voice breaking. "You were supposed to be dead." I couldn't answer. Tears flooded my eyes as Samuel stirred, coughing again. For a long moment, he just stared, his whole body shaking. Then he stepped forward, falling to his knees in the mud beside me. He touched my cheek, his hands trembling like a man who had seen a ghost. "My son lied to me," he whispered. "He told me you were gone." His gaze moved to Samuel. "And this child is his." I nodded, unable to speak through the sobs. And there under the bridge, my life began to change. The rain soaked through his expensive coat, but my father-in-law didn't care. He stayed kneeling in the mud, his hands trembling as he cupped my face. I had not seen him in years, yet in that moment, it felt as though the world stopped moving. "Evelyn," he whispered again, as if saying my name might make me disappear. "You're alive. All this time, you've been alive." I could barely speak. My lips trembled as I nodded. Tears ran down my face, mixing with the rain. Samuel stirred in my arms, his small cough echoing through the underpass. The man's eyes fell on him. He leaned closer, his voice breaking. "And this boy, he's my grandson." I looked down at Samuel, who blinked up at him with wide, innocent eyes. My throat tightened. For 2 years, I had carried this secret, endured hunger and shame, all while Henry lived in luxury with Clara. Now here I was, exposed, vulnerable, with the truth lying in my arms. "Yes," I finally whispered. "He is yours, your blood." My father-in-law, Mr. Thompson, covered his face with his hands and sobbed. I had never seen that man cry. He was strong, powerful, feared in business, and admired in society. But in that moment, he was just a grandfather, grieving 2 years of stolen time. When he finally looked up, his eyes were wet but fierce. "My son did this," he said through clenched teeth. "He told me you died. He had an entire funeral. And all this time, you were here, suffering." I wanted to speak, to explain, but my voice broke. I could only hold Samuel tighter. Without another word, Mr. Thompson rose to his feet. He pulled off his coat and wrapped it around my shoulders. Then he extended his hand to me. "You're coming with me, both of you, tonight." I shook my head weakly. "I can't. I have nothing. No clothes, no papers. I don't belong anywhere anymore." His voice thundered under the bridge, firm and unyielding. "You belong to my family, and no one, not even my son, can erase that." With his help, I stood on unsteady legs, clutching Samuel close. My body trembled from weakness. But his presence gave me strength. The car door opened, and for the first time in years, I sat on leather seats that smelled of wealth and comfort. Samuel leaned against me, his little hand clutching mine as his cough softened into sleep. The drive felt unreal. Streetlights blurred through the rain-streaked windows. I kept looking at my reflection, half expecting to wake up back under the bridge. But when the car turned through iron gates and rolled up a long driveway, I knew this was no dream. We arrived at the Thompson mansion. I had walked past it once after Henry's wedding, too ashamed to step closer. Now I was entering through the grand doors, holding my son, with the man of the house leading me inside. Warmth enveloped us. The scent of polished wood and fresh flowers filled the air. A maid gasped when she saw me, nearly dropping a tray. "Mr. Thompson barked, "Get blankets, food, and medicine for the boy." Within minutes, Samuel was lying in a soft bed, wrapped in blankets. Doctors were called immediately, examining him with care I could never afford. I sat by his side, stroking his hair, still half afraid someone would tell me to leave. But instead, Mr. Thompson stood in the doorway, watching us with a storm in his eyes. "You suffered like this," he said softly, while my son and that woman paraded in front of the world. His jaw tightened. "This is unforgivable." I wanted to tell him everything. How Henry had handed me divorce papers. How Clara had betrayed me. How I had fainted in the hospital, only to discover the miracle of Samuel. But the words stuck in my throat. The shame was heavy. That night, Mr. Thompson himself brought me a tray of food. I ate slowly, tears spilling into every bite. For 2 years, I had begged for scraps. Yet here I was, served like I still mattered. He sat across from me, his eyes fixed on Samuel. "I wronged you, too," he said quietly. "I should have asked more questions when Henry said you passed. I should have searched harder. I should have known better than to trust him completely." I shook my head. "You believed your son. How could you know?" But deep down, I was grateful for those words. No one had ever admitted fault to me before. The next morning, he took me aside. We stood in his study, a room lined with books and family portraits. My own picture was nowhere, as if I had truly been erased. "I cannot undo what was done," he said. "But I can make it right. At least for you and Samuel. You will not return to the streets. You will not live in shame. I have a property, a lake house, away from prying eyes. It will be yours. From now on, you and Samuel will have peace." Tears blurred my vision. "Why? Why would you do this for me?" His voice shook with emotion. "Because you are my family, and because that child is my heir." Those words struck me like lightning. My little Samuel, born under the bridge, dismissed by the world, was now seen as heir to an empire. Within a week, arrangements were made. Clothes, supplies, even a tutor were provided. Mr. Thompson drove us to the lake house himself, a beautiful, quiet place where the water mirrored the sky and the air smelled of pine. For the first time in years, I could breathe without fear. Samuel laughed as he toddled through the garden, chasing butterflies. His cheeks grew fuller with every meal. His cough faded, and his eyes sparkled with joy. I watched him and thought, maybe life is not over for us after all. But I also knew something else. Mr. Thompson was not finished. One evening, as we sat by the fire, he turned to me. His face was calm, but his eyes burned with determination. "I am hosting a dinner party," he said. "Business associates, family, friends. Henry and Clara will be there, too. And at that dinner, I will announce the truth." I froze, my hands trembling around my teacup. "The truth?" He nodded firmly. "That you are alive, that my grandson exists, that my son lied to me and to the world." My heart raced. Part of me longed for justice. But another part was terrified, facing Henry and Clara again. What would they do? What would they say? But then I looked at Samuel, sleeping peacefully on a couch nearby, his little chest rising and falling, and I knew I could not hide forever. If not for me, then for him. My son deserved the truth. He deserved his place. So I lifted my chin and whispered, "Yes, announce it. Let the world know." And in that moment, I realized the bridge that once symbolized my shame was gone. I was no longer the woman abandoned with nothing. I was a mother, a survivor, and I was about to watch justice unfold. The lake house gave me a peace I hadn't felt in decades. The water shimmered like glass in the mornings, and in the evenings, the sky turned gold as Samuel chased fireflies in the garden. Sometimes, when he laughed, I closed my eyes and let the sound wash over me like medicine. I told myself this was enough, that I didn't need revenge or recognition or wealth, that Samuel's smile was all the justice I needed. But Mr. Thompson didn't see it that way. To him, this was not just about love. It was about betrayal. His own son had lied to him, stolen his grandchild's place in the family, and buried me alive with deceit. He couldn't let it rest. And the more time I spent in his presence, the more I realized he wasn't just planning a dinner, he was planning a reckoning. One evening, he joined me on the porch of the lake house. The air was cool, and Samuel was asleep inside. He poured us each a cup of tea, his hands steady despite the storm brewing in his mind. "Evelyn," he said, looking out at the water. "I've lived long enough to know that secrets rot families from the inside. My son's lies have already poisoned this household. If I don't rip the truth out now, it will destroy everything." I nodded, though my heart was heavy. "But when you tell them, it will shatter him. It will shatter Clara, too." His lips curved into something between a sneer and a grimace. "Good. Let them shatter. Maybe then they'll understand what they've done." I wanted to argue, to beg him to leave it buried, but deep down, I knew he was right. Samuel had a right to be seen. I had a right to be acknowledged. And Henry had a right to face the consequences of his cruelty. The day of the dinner came faster than I expected. A driver arrived at the lake house to take me and Samuel to the mansion. I dressed in a simple navy dress, nothing too bold, but enough to remind myself I was not the broken woman who once slept under a bridge. Samuel clung to my hand as we entered the grand hall. The chandeliers glowed above, and the tables sparkled with crystal glasses and silver cutlery. Guests were already mingling, their laughter and chatter filling the air. When they saw me, conversations faltered. Some gasped, some whispered. One woman dropped her fork onto her plate with a loud clatter. I heard one voice, sharp and incredulous, "Isn't that Evelyn? But she's supposed to be dead." My cheeks burned, but I held my head high. Samuel pressed against my side, his small hand warm in mine. Then I saw them, Henry and Clara, standing together near the head of the table. Henry wore his expensive suit, his hair perfectly styled, his arm draped around Clara as if she were a prize he had won. Clara's smile faltered the moment her eyes met mine. Her face drained of color, and she stumbled back as though she had seen a ghost. Henry's reaction was different. He froze, his jaw tightening, his fists clenching at his sides. His eyes darted to his father, then back to me. For once, he had no words. The room fell silent as Mr. Thompson stood at the center, his presence commanding. He tapped his glass lightly, and all eyes turned to him. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice deep and steady. "Thank you for joining me tonight. This dinner is not only for business, it is for family. And tonight, you will hear the truth about mine." The silence deepened. I could feel my pulse pounding in my throat. Samuel clutched my skirt, peeking shyly at the crowd. "Mr. Thompson lifted his hand toward me. "Many of you attended a funeral 2 years ago. You wept with us. You comforted us because we were told that my daughter-in-law, Evelyn, had passed away. That she left this world in sorrow and without an heir." Gasps rippled across the room. Eyes darted between me and Henry. Clara looked like she might faint. But Mr. Thompson continued, his voice hardening. "That funeral was built on a lie. Evelyn did not die. She was cast aside, betrayed, abandoned, and left to suffer. While my son and this woman," he pointed at Clara, his hand shaking with rage, "paraded in luxury on the grave they dug for her." Clara let out a choked sob, hiding her face. Henry's face twisted in anger, but still, he said nothing. Mr. Thompson's voice grew louder, every word sharp as a blade. "And while they lived their lie, Evelyn carried my son's child. She raised him in poverty, in shame, while I mourned a daughter-in-law I believed was gone. Tonight, I set the record straight." He turned and beckoned to Samuel. My little boy, wide-eyed, stepped forward. I bent down, smoothing his hair, whispering, "It's okay, darling. Just walk to Grandpa." Samuel toddled over, and Mr. Thompson lifted him into his arms, holding him high for all to see. "This is Samuel Thompson," he declared. "My grandson, my heir, the true blood of this family." The hall erupted. Some guests gasped, others whispered frantically. A few even clapped, though awkwardly, unsure of what else to do. Henry's face turned red. "Father, this is madness. She's lying. That child," silence. Mr. Thompson roared. His voice shook the walls. "Do not speak another word, Henry. You dishonored this family. You lied to me, to the world, and you buried your wife alive while you took her best friend to your bed. You disgust me." Henry's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came. Clara clutched his arm, her face streaked with tears, her perfect facade shattered. I stood frozen, my heart pounding, as the truth finally echoed through the walls of the mansion. For years, I had been invisible, erased, forgotten. Now, I was undeniable. When the noise died down, Mr. Thompson lowered Samuel gently. His voice softened as he looked at me. "From this day forward, Evelyn and Samuel will live in this family as they should have all along. And anyone who dares to challenge that will answer to me." Applause broke out. Not everyone clapped, but enough did to drown out Henry's sputtering protests. I looked at my son, who nestled against me, unaware of the storm around him. My heart ached with a mix of triumph and sorrow. I had justice, yes, but justice could not give me back the 30 years I lost or erase the pain of betrayal. As the dinner went on, whispers continued. Some came to me, offering apologies for believing Henry's lies. Others avoided me, too ashamed to meet my eyes. But none of it mattered. What mattered was Samuel. His future was secure. His name was restored. He would never know the shame I endured. And yet, as I sat there, I couldn't help but notice Henry. He sat at the far end of the table, staring into his untouched plate, his hands trembling. Clara beside him was pale, broken, her eyes swollen from crying. For the first time, Henry looked small, weak, like a man who had built his kingdom on sand, only to watch it crumble in one night. And though part of me wanted to rejoice, another part whispered, is this really the end, or just the beginning of another battle? The night of the dinner party stayed etched in my memory like a wound that had finally been cleaned. It was painful, yes, but necessary. For the first time in decades, the lies had been stripped away, and the truth had a voice. But truth doesn't just settle quietly into hearts. It rattles. It burns. It forces people to face what they've run from. And in the days that followed, the Thompson mansion became a battlefield. Mr. Thompson stood firm. He moved Samuel and me into the estate the very next morning. The staff, who once whispered cruelly about me, now bowed their heads in respect. Some brought me fresh flowers for my room. Others treated Samuel like a young prince. But I didn't fool myself. Respect that comes from fear of Mr. Thompson's wrath was not the same as love. Still, for Samuel's sake, I accepted it. My boy deserved to walk in the sunlight, not in the shadows. Henry, however, could not accept his defeat. 2 days after the dinner, he stormed into my new quarters without knocking. His face was pale, his hair disheveled, his eyes wild. Clara trailed behind him, her once perfect appearance crumbling, her mascara smeared from sleepless nights. Evelyn, Henry spat, his voice low and venomous. What have you done? Do you think this changes anything? Do you think parading that boy around makes him mine, makes him worthy? Samuel, sitting on the rug with his toy cars, looked up at the sound of his father's voice. His little face lit up with innocent hope. Daddy, he said softly. My heart clenched. He didn't understand the venom in that word. He didn't understand that Henry saw him as a stain, not a son. Henry froze for a moment, as if the word had cut through his armor, but then he sneered. Don't call me that. Samuel's smile faded. He turned back to his toys, shoulders slumped. I rose from my chair, my voice steady, though my hands trembled. Get out, Henry. You've done enough damage. Clara stepped forward, tears streaming down her cheeks. Evelyn, please, please forgive us. We thought you, don't you dare, I snapped, my years of quiet suffering sharpening into steel. Don't you dare stand in front of me and pretend you thought I was gone. You both knew what you did. You both chose this path, and now you'll walk it to the end. Clara crumpled into a chair, sobbing uncontrollably. Henry, however, only grew darker. You think father will keep you here forever, he hissed. He's old. One day, he'll be gone. And then what? This estate is mine. The business is mine. You'll be nothing again. I looked him dead in the eye. No, Henry. You lost your claim the moment you betrayed me. Samuel is your heir now, not you, and that eats you alive, doesn't it? That the son you tried to erase is the one thing you can't destroy. He lunged forward as if to strike me, but Clara caught his arm, crying out, Henry, stop. Just then, Mr. Thompson entered, his cane striking the marble floor like thunder. His voice was cold, sharp. If you touch her, Henry, I'll disown you before the sun sets. Do you understand me? Henry froze, his chest heaving. His father's gaze pinned him like a nail. I built this empire, Mr. Thompson said, his voice shaking with fury. And I will tear it apart with my own hands before I let you inherit it. From this day forward, everything, every cent, every stone, every title, belongs to Evelyn and Samuel. You are no longer my son. You are dead to me. The words hung in the air like a curse. Henry's face went white. For the first time, I saw not arrogance, but fear. Real fear. His lips trembled as he looked at me, then at Samuel, who quietly pushed his toy car back and forth, unaware of the storm around him. Clara let out a strangled sob. No, no, please. You can't do this. But Mr. Thompson was unmoved. He turned his back on them, his voice final. Leave my house, both of you, tonight. And so they did. I watched from the balcony as Henry and Clara left the estate. Their suitcases were hastily packed, their heads bowed. Henry glanced back once, his eyes burning with hatred, but he said nothing. Clara clung to him, broken, her face pale as the moon. I should have felt triumph. I should have felt vindicated. But as I held Samuel in my arms, all I felt was sorrow. For years, I had begged for Henry's love. For years, I had prayed he would see me. And now, in the end, the only thing left between us was ashes. Mr. Thompson tried to comfort me. He arranged tutors for Samuel, set up trust funds, and introduced me to his business partners as the true matriarch of the family. But late at night, when the house was silent, I would sit by the window and think of the years stolen from me, the years I could never get back. One evening, as I tucked Samuel into bed, he looked up at me with his wide, innocent eyes and whispered, "Mommy, why doesn't Daddy love me?" The question pierced my heart like a blade. Tears filled my eyes, but I forced a smile for him. I stroked his hair and whispered, "Oh, my darling, it's not that he doesn't love you. It's that he doesn't know how. But you don't need to worry. You are loved by me, by Grandpa, by everyone who truly matters, and that will always be enough." He smiled sleepily and drifted into dreams. I stayed by his side until the morning light touched his cheeks. Years later, when Samuel grew tall and strong, he carried the Thompson name with honor. He became the kind of man his father never was, gentle, wise, and full of compassion. And every time I looked at him, I knew my suffering had not been in vain. Henry and Clara, they faded into whispers. I heard rumors of debts, of scandals, of a marriage that crumbled under the weight of their choices. But I never sought them out. Some ghosts are better left in the past. And as for me, I learned that sometimes justice doesn't come in the way we imagine. It doesn't erase the pain. It doesn't heal the scars, but it gives you the strength to stand tall again. It gives your children the chance to live free of lies. Now, as I tell you my story, I do not ask for pity. I only ask that you remember this: no matter how deep the betrayal, no matter how cruel the lies, the truth always finds a way. It may take years. It may take decades. But one day, the light will break through the darkness. And when it does, you must be ready to stand in it. Not as the broken soul they left behind, but as the survivor you've become. For me, that light was Samuel, my son, my hope, my redemption. And in his laughter, I found the life they tried to steal.